Hello, and welcome to Impractical Privacy, your weekly dose of truth about your digital life. I'm your host, Sudo. Together, we will cut through the tech jargon and deliver the real privacy news you need to know, from data breaches and surveillance trends to simple, actionable tactics you can use today to protect your information. Each week, we'll explore cutting-edge, privacy-preserving tools, share practical recommendations, and help you reclaim control of your data. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it's crucial. So let's get started. This podcast is based in the US, and as such, the news it focuses on will be US-centric. That's not to say we won't cover topics from other countries or regions, but a disclaimer that the news and advice is US-focused. Let's start the podcast with a topic that everyone can relate to. How safe are your communications, your messages? What services do you use that are true end-to-end encrypted? Chances are they aren't as private and secure as you think they are. Regular SMS is transmitted in plain text, so anyone who has access to that or able to intercept that has no trouble reading what you've written. However, that should come as no surprise to anyone who's ever watched an episode of Law & Order or CSI. Where it starts to get tricky is on platforms that claim they are secure, but really have some holes in their methodology. Let's start with Telegram, for example. Telegram is a wildly popular messaging app with over 1 billion monthly active users. Telegram and its founder, Pavel Durov, advertise it as being private and secure, yet there are no end-to-end encrypted chats by default. By Telegram's own admission, default chats are client-to-server and then server-to-client encrypted, meaning your data should be safe in transit. However, it's theoretically readable by anyone with Telegram server access. This is a glaring security issue for a service whose catchphrase is pure instant messaging, simple, fast, secure, and synced across all your devices. The way that I look at it is this. If you weren't presented with encryption keys when you set up the chat, plain and simple, your chats aren't safe. iMessage is similar. Your communication is absolutely safe in transit. Believe that when you see blue bubbles, your messages aren't able to be read by someone snooping on your internet. This includes your carrier or internet service provider. However, unless you have very specific settings turned on in your iCloud and Apple ID, Apple is still holding on to your encryption keys, and your chats could theoretically be read by anyone with server access. Now, if you and your loved ones are dead set on using iMessage and not switching to an alternative, iMessage can be made more secure. You and everyone you iMessage with will have to take one of two options. Either A, turn off iCloud backup for iMessages, or B, turn on advanced data protection for your entire iCloud account. Now, both of these are a struggle because you have to have everyone do it, not just you. Advanced data protection will still allow you to back up all your stuff to iCloud, including your iMessages. But it's fully encrypted. And guess what? Just like I said earlier, it's only secure if you have the encryption keys. And that's exactly what advanced data protection does. Apple gives you ownership of the keys and deletes the server-side set of keys. I will state, however, if you are in the UK, this is no longer an option for you. Your government made it illegal for Apple to offer this as a feature and still operate within the law, so they removed advanced data protection as an offering for your country. If this bothers you, I recommend you reach out to your government in whatever means you normally do so and start that conversation. This is where Signal comes into the equation. Last month, Signal Messenger announced that they have increased the security of the Signal protocol by introducing the sparse post-quantum ratchet, which is their fancy term for saying that their improved encryption algorithm should be more quantum computer resistant as the ever-impending threat of quantum computers breaking traditional encryption grows. For those listeners who aren't super familiar with quantum computing, don't worry, I got you. A super basic overview is that quantum computing is a different type of problem solving versus traditional computers. A common analogy is a maze. A typical computer, just like a person, would have to solve a maze trying one option at a time, starting from the beginning each time until they find the correct path. Quantum can try all the paths simultaneously. This is problematic for certain types of encryption because fundamentally they function by multiplying very large prime numbers together and knowing what those numbers are as part of the encryption keys. Traditional computers don't have the capacity to brute force through those equations in any meaningful way. Quantum has the capacity to break that trend and render certain types of encryption no longer secure. Signal is just getting ahead of it by enhancing the Signal protocol to be quantum resistant. However, even without the sparse post-quantum ratchet, Signal sets the gold standard in messaging privacy. It really excels in two main areas. First is by default, it's end-to-end encrypted, meaning your chats are encrypted on your device, sent to their destination, and decrypted by the receiving device. Signal at no point holds your keys. If you change devices, your old phone hands the keys to the new one. If you restore from a backup, you have to provide the encryption key that the app presented for you when you started the backups. If you have a contact change their device and start from a clean slate, you'll even get a notification stating that your safety number with them has changed, meaning their keys changed, and Signal wants you to know that. Another area that they absolutely nail it is with the self-destructing messages in chats. You can set a default countdown timer for any chat you create that will automatically delete the messages in that chat for you and the other person. Messages sent through Signal can have a shelf life if you want them. The last area that I believe Signal gets it right is with metadata. Metadata, for listeners who aren't as techie, is all of the information around the data that you actually want. Officially, it's described as data that defines and describes the characteristics of other data. An example of this is with a photo taken from a digital camera. The metadata will tell you the time, date, camera make and model, f-stop, and even GPS position, and so much more. Signal co-founder Moxie Marlinspike, when talking about metadata, stated the closest piece of information to metadata that Signal stores is the last time each user connected to the server, and the precision of this information is reduced to the day rather than the hour, minute, and second. The level of this metadata reduction is achieved by not keeping logs and using a delivery mechanism that Signal refers to as sealed sender. I know some people here will say, what about WhatsApp? It uses the Signal protocol and billions of people use it. Why use Signal over WhatsApp? The answer to that is metadata. To those saying or thinking that, you're absolutely correct. Facebook adopted the Signal protocol for WhatsApp in 2016, 2 years after purchasing the service for $19 billion. Facebook also claims they haven't modified the protocol to be able to see the content of the messages, and I also believe that they haven't. So, back to why Signal. When WhatsApp has the users and the same level of encryption, metadata. That's it, in one word. Facebook and WhatsApp do not take the same level of care to not gather your metadata as Signal does. It's the opposite, in fact. Facebook wants your metadata to be able to build a better profile on you. They might not have access to the content of your messages, but they absolutely track who you send messages to, when you send them, where you are when you send them, if that person responds, the last time you opened the app, how long you were in there. Your end-to-end encryption ends with the content of your messages. Metadata is important, though. Don't just listen to me. According to former head of National Security Agency General Michael Hayden, the U.S. government, quote, kills people based on metadata. Yeah, you heard that right. So protecting your metadata is vital. And simply put, between Signal and WhatsApp, there's only one protecting your metadata and message content. Now, to be fair, it's not all roses and butterflies while using Signal. It requires a phone number to set up. Full stop, that might be a deal breaker for some people based on their threat model. For most people, I believe that the privacy trade-offs are worth needing that identifier to sign up. Another criticism, and potentially the most impactful, is that not everyone is on Signal, and getting people to download a new app and use it is harder than it should be. Signal is a solid piece of tech, but it's not perfect. However, it doesn't matter how strong their encryption is if it's just not viable because people in your circle aren't using it. I am fortunate, and my friends and family have all made the switch to Signal in an effort to stay in communication with me. I only use regular SMS for work. I also know that there are other potentially exciting alternatives to Signal that are also privacy focused. SimpleX and Matrix are two that I've read about quite a bit, and to be fair, both seem promising, although not without their own set of problems. The biggest barrier to adoption is how difficult it is to set up. Signal is dead simple to set up, and I have had great success getting non-techie friends and family to switch to it because it is simple. I've looked into alternatives, and it's always significantly more challenging for non-techie type people. For me, a service that gets most things right and drastically increases the privacy of me and my loved ones is worth it if it's something they'll use. Attempting to force everyone to a perfect system that everyone struggles to set up and use isn't worth that trade-off, even if it does get a few more things right. Let's go ahead and change gears real quick and shift into some current news surrounding digital privacy and security. EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a leading nonprofit of over 35 years that defends digital privacy and free speech, is a great place to stay up to date with some of the news and trends we'll be covering. Last week, they covered a story about several states where bills have been introduced actively working to ban VPNs. That's wild. Lawmakers in Wisconsin and Michigan are both working to ban VPNs in a continued effort to protect the children. Now, don't get me wrong, I have 3 kids myself, and I fully believe they should be safe online from potentially harmful content. I do believe, though, that it falls on me to work towards ensuring their protection and safety online. I don't want the state or federal government deciding how to keep them safe online. Let me do that. And to be clear, there are plenty of ways to do that at home for free or on the cheap that require minimal setup and maintenance. We'll get back to that later, though. For now, let's pivot to why attacking VPNs is problematic. For those listeners who don't know what a VPN is, no worries, I got you. A VPN is a virtual private network. A lot of people use VPNs every day for all types of activity: work, school, privacy reasons. What VPNs do is create an encrypted tunnel from your device to one of their servers, and your internet traffic goes through that tunnel and exits the VPN at a predetermined location. This can be extremely beneficial in many situations. When working from an unsecure Wi-Fi or internet connection, think public Wi-Fi at anywhere. This allows the user to essentially create a direct tunnel into their work network without exposing anything to any unwanted third party. Because of how VPNs work at their core, the traffic is encrypted, so sensitive traffic is safe from anyone without the keys. Journalists, activists, and even physically vulnerable people all use VPN to keep their internet traffic safe from wandering eyes on the networks they use. Another major feature of them is the fact that most VPN providers, at least the ones that I've used personally, allow you to specify an exit location, meaning your device can talk to the regular internet as though it's in whatever location you specify. This can be particularly helpful for someone looking to mitigate censorship in certain areas where information doesn't flow as freely as it could. Now to the core of the problem. Do some people use VPNs to get around geo-blocking and look up restricted content in a region where it's not allowed? Think censorship. Yes. Is banning VPNs at a governmental level the correct course of action? No. And here's why. These states are looking to force the website provider to block access from VPNs that originate within the state itself. From a technical point of view, if your device appears as though it's originating from, let's just say, a New York City IP address, how does the website know if you're not in New York City? You could be anywhere, even in Wisconsin. So in practice, this would likely cause businesses and websites to just outright block known VPN IP addresses, which is harmful to the privacy of everyone who uses them. The real kick in the pants here is that there are so many other ways for a mildly technically savvy person to get around a geo VPN block like that completely mitigate whatever saving the children they think they did. Think of Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. People will discover and use these workarounds, except they'll have less digital privacy because they're likely going to be misconfigured or shady because the real providers are now not allowed in these states. The answer to this isn't in a law that bans privacy-preserving tools. It's in the hands of parents who need better access to tools and education. We're about to get into the weeds a little on DNS, so let's talk about what DNS is for a minute. For listeners who don't know what DNS is, don't worry, I got you. DNS stands for Domain Name System. It's an old piece of the internet. It was created in late 1983, and it's been in wide use on the internet since 1985. Essentially, when you type into your browser www.google.com, for example, your computer doesn't actually know how to get to Google's website. All it knows is the plain text name of the site you want to go to. It has to go to a DNS resolver and ask, hey, how do I get to google.com? The DNS resolver will respond with an IP address, at which point your browser loads the page you were trying to go to and the whole system works. DNS resolvers are owned and operated by a ton of different entities. Google runs one, Cloudflare, even your internet service provider has DNS resolvers it operates. DNS is truly a foundational piece of the internet. Without it, the internet stops functioning. Think of the biggest service outages in recent memory. There's a huge chance that whatever outage you're thinking of was caused by DNS. Now let's talk about how to use DNS to help solve the issue that blocking VPNs would be trying to solve. Also, remember this is a brand new podcast. I have no sponsors. Every tool and service I mention here is a genuine recommendation because I either use the tool, have used it previously, or have looked into it and think it's worthwhile. In my house, I use NextDNS in order to block, at a network level, the type of content that I don't want my kids looking at. NextDNS isn't free though. It does cost $1.99 a month for unlimited DNS requests. They do have a free tier that's good for 300,000 queries a month with whatever filtering options you have. And once you burn through that, it goes back to no filtering. It's nice to see if it's going to work for you without having to spend any money. An always free, but more technically demanding alternative is setting up a Pi-hole on your local network and using that as your own DNS resolver. Pi-hole does the exact same job as NextDNS, but running on your own hardware. It does require some know-how and either Docker or a Linux install to function. But if you're willing to get into the weeds, it is fantastic. I used Pi-hole for years before my kids got cell phones, and I needed an off Wi-Fi solution that didn't require too much tinkering. That's what led me to NextDNS for this. It is perfectly able to be used on phones while off a local Wi-Fi. I run millions of DNS queries through it a month with no issues. In addition to blocking specific types of traffic like porn, torrenting, or gambling, both of these solutions are fantastic at blocking ads and trackers as well. Trackers are wildly privacy invasive. Trackers will monitor your devices and feed all types of information about your devices back to whomever is paying for it. All types of information, believe me. All available to whomever wants to pay for it. They can track things like device orientation and movement, sites clicked on and time spent on that site, searched topics, even location data. Most of this is fairly benign if taken alone and without anything else. However, it quickly becomes possible to build a super accurate profile of someone based on the above information. And more concerningly, this data isn't covered by the same type of protection laws you would expect either. A strong example of this is that law enforcement needs a warrant to monitor your location, or they could just buy your location data from a data broker. The same data broker that got your information from a tracker in an ad. There's nothing preventing either of them from doing this. No law that says they can't, and no data broker that says no. This isn't a hypothetical or made-up situation. This is something that's happening now and in many jurisdictions nationwide and worldwide. Regardless of whether or not a person feels they have something to hide, circumventing laws put in place to protect people and prevent abuse is just wrong and should be illegal. The list of concerns about trackers and ads goes on significantly farther. We'll cover that in our next episode. And on that note, that wraps up this week's episode, our first episode together on what will hopefully become part of your weekly routine. Content like this really thrives based on community and feedback. I'm new to this, so as of this recording, the main way to chat about anything are either through the chat in Patreon or emailing me directly. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends and family. If you'd like to support me on this journey, I do have a Patreon. Links to my Patreon, email address, and all the news articles and quotes mentioned are in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and tune in next Wednesday for an in-depth dive into ads, trackers, and data brokers and how to fight them, in addition to more current privacy news and other related topics.